All right, Kelly, we begin with that tentative labor agreement between Hollywood writers and the studios that could end the ongoing writers' strike that's lasted nearly 150 days. And while it's not finalized yet, the WGA reportedly calling it, quote, an exceptional deal with meaningful gains and protections for writers. For more, let's bring in Elaine Low, staff writer for The Ankler. Elaine, welcome. Good to have you with us. While the writers seem to be cheering this deal, we really don't know much about what's in it, do we?
We don't. The contract language hasn't been fully sorted out yet, so the Guild hasn't shared it with the membership. But like you said, the Writers Guild called it exceptional, says there are meaningful gains and protections for all sectors of the writers' membership. And that enough was cause for celebration. I was out covering some of the festivities last night. There were, parties all across bars in L.A., a couple hundred people up at a bar in North Hollywood. And when I was talking to people, they were relieved, they were elated, they were thrilled that a deal had gotten done, tentatively, of course, on day 146 of this strike, because it's been a long 4.5 months for these folks. And, SAG-AFTRA is still on strike. They're on day 74 today.
What would happy-making protections on AI look like for the writers?
That's a good question. The writers are concerned about this. It's an emerging technology, something that's been moving very quickly. So hard to say what that contract language is going to actually be finalized into, but there's concern about studios being able to use their words and their materials in the future without compensation or adequate compensation. And there's just a whole host of issues with any kind of emerging technology, in the same way that there were questions around so-called new media, which is just streaming as we know it today, back in the 2007-2008 strike. There are also issues that the writers right now are hoping to resolve with residuals, with pay increases, with staffing minimums. So, be very interested to see in the final language of that contract.
Did they give you any hints, Elaine? Are we talking, 8%, 12%, 16, 20, 24, some kind of ballpark here? And again, this revenue sharing piece that, especially for successful shows, seems like it's incredibly important.
Oh, I wish I could tell you, but I was talking to some of the writers last night, and streaming residuals is very high on the list because, they've seen the way the streaming economy has impacted their work over the past 5 to 10 years. And, this is something that SAG-AFTRA is also going to be taking a very close look at. Obviously, the writers and the performers have different issues, but there are some things that overlap, including AI, including streaming residuals. So, I think there's a chance that this sets something of a template for those issues once the studios go back into talks with SAG-AFTRA.
Is there any sign of movement on the SAG-AFTRA agreement?
Well, the studios have been dealing with one guild at a time. So now that they've come to a tentative deal with the Writers Guild, they will eventually be turning their attention back to SAG-AFTRA. As far as I know, there aren't any talks on the books yet, but I imagine that has to happen soon.
We hear a lot about the particular members of the who were negotiating on the studio side. It included Warner Brothers Discovery's David Zaslav, an individual from NBC Universal, our parent company. Is Bob Iger, Donna Langley, Ted Sarandos. Is there one of those four folks who is more influential in that group than others? Is Netflix the driver here, or are they all equal players?
Those conversations all took place behind closed doors. I couldn't tell you what exactly transpired, but obviously each of those players has different things at stake in this, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, we've seen how Netflix has impacted the streaming world, how all of these other streaming players have, tried to come to the fore in the wake of their dominance of the streaming landscape. And we've also seen how, Disney has caught up with Disney Plus and how they've been trying to reshape their business around this new world where there's a secular decline in cable viewership and a rise in streaming that is still, notoriously a fairly low margin business.